Good afternoon. This is Larry Mathis speaking to you on this beautiful day to share with you some of my favorite scripture. To honestly say that I had a favorite would probably not be accurate, but I do have certain favorite verses of scripture that I look to during various times, depending on what's occurring or happening in my own life. I think as we look at what's happening today with the COVID-19 virus, we could turn, I think, to the book of Luke, the 8th chapter, verses 22 through 25, and take a brief look at those. Now it came to pass on a certain day that he went into a ship with his disciples, and he said unto them, Let us go over unto the other side of the lake. And they launched forth. But as they sailed, he, meaning Jesus, fell asleep, and there came a storm of wind on the water, and they were filled with water and were in jeopardy. And they, the disciples, came to him and woke him, saying, Master, Master, we perish. Then he arose and rebuked the wind and the raging of the water, and they ceased, and there was a calm. And he said unto them, Where is your faith? And they, being afraid, wondered, saying one to another, What manner of man is this? For he commandeth even the winds and the water, and they obey him. You know, thinking back to perhaps maybe the middle of March or somewhere in that area, I don't know that any of us could have imagined what's taken place. It seemed that like one day everything was fine, and then the next day it wasn't. But I think this is the reality of the world. Everything can often seem fine, and then it isn't. I remember when I heard about the coronavirus, and like you, it seemed to be something that was obscure, taking place in another part of the world. But then suddenly, our sports events began to close down. Schools began to be canceled for certain periods of time, and eventually for the remainder of the year. And we found ourselves pretty much confined to our houses. When we think about the disciples in this particular verse of Scripture, I think we are much like them. We sometimes have a tendency to be afraid. And I think the fear is real. I think for those of us who are 60 years of age and older, there is a certain legitimacy to the fear that there's no doubt that this virus attacks those of us who are older than those who are younger. I think there's a real fear to those who may own a business and are struggling to do everything that they can to keep that business. And I think there's a real fear to those of us who may be grandparents that we can't see except maybe by Skype or some of the other things, FaceTime, our grandchildren, for instance. So I think a certain amount of fear is certainly warranted in this particular time. But like the disciples, we need to remember, as Jesus said to them, he would always be with us. He would never forsake us, nor leave us. If you turn, I think, to other places in the Scripture, Jesus reminds us of that a lot, not just in that one particular place in Luke, but in many places in the Bible. One such place to the book of Hebrews, the 13th chapter and the 5th verse, God said, I will never fail you, and I will never abandon you. Again, a reformation or a reaffirmation that regardless of the circumstances, regardless of what life throws to us, he's going to be with us. In James 4 and 8, it says, come close to God and God will come close to you. And I think that's what we need to do during this time. I think in these moments of time in our homes where we maybe can't get out as much as we would like, that remembering that God will come to us in this time if we would only come to him. So in silent meditation, I think that we can do that. I think we can know that God's presence is here and that we're going to get through this. and that on the other side of it, we will be praying to God not to calm us from the fear of the storm, but we will be praying and offering words of thanks for helping us to get through this storm. Thank you.